The Old Wolf Lady at Saki no Ura. A long time ago, there was a small fishing village called Saki no Ura in the ancient province of Tosa. Near this village, there was a steep mountain by the name of Mount Nun. Hundreds of ferocious wolves lived on this mountain, and they killed and ate travelers who passed over the road at night. The villagers were understandably terrified, and when night fell, no one would even walk from one house to another. Once, however, there was a courier who happened to be on this road just as night fell. Shouldering a wooden pack containing the letters in his charge, he jogged over the steep mountain passes, repeating a sort of rhythmic chant as he went along. Ayo! Ayo! Inside his pack this particular night was an important letter from the local lord. Just as the courier was passing a large cryptomeria, he heard what sounded like the painful groan of a woman. That's a strange thing to hear at a time like this, he thought. The courier stopped and then walked slowly in the direction of the moaning voice. He could now hear that it was coming from inside a small but dense thicket in front of his eyes. Hesitantly, he held up his lamp to see, and there was a young woman collapsed on the grass. Holding her distended belly, she was panting and gasping for breath. "Excuse me," he said softly, "what's the matter?" "I was on an errand to the next mountain," she said, "and my belly began to hurt. I think I'm about to have my baby." And with that, she held her belly again and seemed to be in terrible distress. This is terrible, the courier thought, cradling the poor woman's head. He had to quickly deliver the important letter he was carrying, but on the other hand, he could simply not abandon a woman in pain. At the same time, he had no idea how to deliver a baby, and if he hesitated too long, the baby was going to be born anyway. As a stopgap, the courier gathered some grass for a bed beneath the cryptomeria and got the woman to lie down and rest there. Her condition became worse and worse, however, and she cried out as though she was being murdered. Suddenly, the howls of approaching wolves could be heard coming from here and there, as though they were joining her groans in chorus. "We're in for it now," the courier shuddered. "We've been discovered by the wolves." The courier unsheathed his sword and took a stance so that he might protect the young woman. Low growls came from nearby, and numerous fiery eyes began to gleam in the dark. Suddenly, one of the wolves let out a sharp howl and instantaneously leapt toward the courier. The courier quickly jumped to the side, away from the animal's path, but now there were wolves coming at him from the front and behind. Brandishing his sword, he flailed away at them in any way he could. The wolves he was about to strike yelped in pain and ran away, but immediately other wolves would appear and join the attack. It seemed clear that a single courier was not going to be able to hold them off for long. Just when the courier was thinking he could not stay on his feet much longer, one of the wolves suddenly barked in a near-human voice. "This fellow's pretty tough. We'd better call the old lady at the blacksmith's shop in Saki no Ura." No sooner was this pronounced than he ran off like the wind. The other wolves followed him in one great pack. "We're saved," the courier panted, and sat heavily on the ground. Perhaps because she had been frightened by the wolves, the young lady lay absolutely still, her eyes tightly shut. It occurred to the courier that if they didn't escape now, the situation might turn for the worse. But just as he began to take the woman up in his arms to carry her away, the wolf pack closed in again. At the head of the pack was an old wolf that seemed to be its leader, and its expression was truly frightening. "All right," the courier thought, "if this is the way it's going to be, I'll take the leader out first." Once again he brandished his sword and in a flash struck at the head wolf. The wolf, who was caught unawares, let out an ear-splitting howl of pain and fled. This leader had run away, so there was nothing to be done. The other wolves leapt away in full panic. The courier was certain that the wolves would not be coming back, and relieved, went back to where he had left the young woman. At the first hint of dawn, she finally gave birth to a baby boy. The courier then accompanied mother and son to the village without incident. The next day, the courier went through Saki no Ura again on his return from delivering the letter and suddenly remembered the events of the night before. "I'm sure the wolves mentioned an old lady at the blacksmith's shop," he recalled. When he asked a villager who was passing by if there was a blacksmith's shop in the vicinity, the man replied, "The blacksmith's shop? It's right over there." Walking over to the front of the shop, he found that there was some sort of commotion going on inside. "What's the matter?" he asked one of the members of the household. "The fact is," the man answered, "that the old lady of the house was injured by the tusk of a wild boar last night." When the courier inquired about the nature of the injury, the man replied with a grimace, "It was an injury to the head, a terrible wound." "Just what I thought," the courier mused, and deep inside clapped his hands in satisfaction. Then, with an innocent expression on his face, said, "Well, that's a terrible disaster, but I happen to be a doctor, and if you like I can take a look at her." "That would be a blessing," the man said. "Please, come in." The man happily led the courier to the room where the old lady was lying down and groaning, her hands tightly grasping the edge of the futon. The courier sat at her pillow and looked at the old lady's face. "This is a sword wound, for sure," he thought. Swiftly taking the short sword he had hidden in his robe from its sheath, he stabbed the old lady right through the heart. "Take that, you old wolf." He did this with such speed that the people of the household had no time to intervene. The old lady gave a shriek and died on the spot. And then it happened. Hair suddenly began to grow from the old lady's body, and her face turned into that wolf right before the onlookers' eyes. The courier explained the events of the night before to the shocked members of the household. "Well, this thing must have eaten our old granny as well," one of them said. And looking under the bed, they found a pile of human bones mixed with an old lady's grey hair. The cryptomeria where the young lady gave birth is still standing, and its leaves have become talismans for local women who are about to have children themselves.